Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Crisis. And this is from writer-director Nicholas Jarecki, who previously his claim to fame would most likely be Arbitrage, which had Richard Gere in it. And this particular film takes on three stories centered around opioids and focuses on Gary Oldman, who is a scientist who is testing a new drug and finds that there's some issues with it. Big company doesn't want to stop it. You have Armie Hammer, who's an undercover DEA agent who's probably a little too undercover and a little too close to it and taking a little bit too many chances as he's trying to take down a ring of opiate runners. And you have Evangeline Lilly, a former addict whose son winds up dead because of an overdose, and she will stop at nothing to make sure that she finds out what happens. And you throw in some other actors like Greg Kinnear, Michelle Rodriguez, Luke Evans, Lily Rose Depp, and a band of solid Canadian actors as well. And this film is trying to balance these three different stories, and right off the bat you get this exciting, exhilarating action sequence at the beginning. You have this young drug runner around the Canadian border being chased down, and it's exciting. It's a big punch to start off the film, and then you cut into setting up these stories. You have this overarching theme, ideas of drugs, and this feels very much like Traffic or Crash in terms of those kinds of films that focus on these different stories, I guess, and Babel, some of which are better than others. This one is on the more solid side. I enjoyed this film. I don't think this is a great film, but it has some things that do really work. You have Armie Hammer, who's, to be honest, his storyline's the one that I felt the least invested in, and it took way too long into the film for me to really get roped in. And interesting enough, it's his relationship with his sister that first really grabs me on a level that I actually care about the story because it's tragic. Lily Rose Depp plays his addict sister who, has to, she gets out of rehab and he has to find her, and this sequence is really heartbreaking and sad, and Armie Hammer's your force, and there's definitely an interesting feeling looming over this movie watching this with Armie Hammer being in this film, but you can't take away from the fact that he is a pretty intimidating presence in this film. Sure, he is in real life too, and it really comes off here, and he does a rock solid job. He's definitely not the most memorable performance in the film, but he puts you on edge, and his character does that. You have some of the other threads in his story, and that's where some of the acting isn't the strongest. I feel like Michelle Rodriguez is pretty stiff as his superior, and the scenes that she's in I didn't find very convincing. And then you have Evangeline Lilly's story, which she's heartbreaking. She gives in a fantastic performance in this film, emotionally devastating, and you feel for her. And this is one of the more exaggerated kinds of stories because the other two stories feel very realistic. This one is, this woman has loss and she's trying to find what happened to her son, and she takes the law into her own hands, and it feels more like a kind of action thriller and less like a narrative action thriller, which has a exciting and exhilarating story, and less as something that feels like this could be real. And the film is not this is not based off of actual events, but it's influenced by actual events. And this one feels a little out there. It feels like this big revenge plot, But the thing is, I felt extremely emotionally connected to it because the performance Evangeline Lilly gives in terms of her loss. And where some of the things feel a little outlandish as the film goes on, I still felt invested. And then you have Gary Oldman's story, which is the most big picture, and I felt very connected to it. Except this is the one that kind of feels like, why is this in this particular movie when the two other stories, whether through convenience or honestly convenience, come together? This one's kind of just hanging out, chilling by itself, but it still tells a great story thematically related to the other ones. So in the end, I don't feel like these three stories really come together in a really meaningful way, but it does hit the right themes and goes for the same kinds of thoughts. Where would any of these, like, would they have made short films of any of these? But even if you take Gary Oldman's story out, I feel like you have, like, it would definitely be a briefer film, but on the short end for a feature, but at least it'd still have these two stories that actually connect to each other and feel a little bit more connected. The Gary Oldman story kind of just feels like it's out there. And you have Gary Oldman dealing with this company man, Luke Evans. You have his colleague, Greg Kinnear, and it's tragic what you see. And Gary Oldman has a little fire in him in this film, and I appreciate that. And besides all of this, you get some cool things, like a crime montage with a Rolling Stones song, and I'm like, am I watching a Scorsese movie? And this film is much more serious and focused and not flashy, but it has very smooth camera work and shots where it feels like it's competently created, but nothing like an auteur or like a Scorsese. This doesn't feel like that. But you have a lot of moving pieces in this film, and like I said, some of the stories have a different level of interest or level of balance between them, and you have a score that's like a pulsing kind of score that fits this action thriller kind of vibe that it goes for in at least two of the stories. Yet again, tonally, not all of them feel like they're coming from it at the same point. But in the end, I feel like I did get quite a bit out of Crisis, even if things don't fully come together. It's flawed, but it still is effective, and I think that's the best thing, and has some strong performances at the core of the film. But in the end, I would give this one a try. But those are my thoughts on Crisis. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.